Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, All Nation Renovation, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, LLC, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, C.B. Richard Ellis, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Cushman and Wakefield, Dimes Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Eastern Consolidated, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman, LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Gian Tomasi, Grubb and Ellis, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Newmark Knight Frank, RAL Development Services, The Spandrel Group, LLC, Siami Development, SJP Properties, Site Comply, Sterling and Sterling, Stephen Napolitano, The Wickoff Group, Urban American.
New York City has some unique individuals, unique in so many manners. But how many people teach high school, college, become lawyers, and then really become the queen, literally the queen of catering, the queen of kosher catering, and now later on the head of really the price line of catering? I'm really lucky today to have my friend Rhona Silva of CaterBid. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So it's always nice when you get somebody who's born and bred in New York City. You were born in the Bronx, so tell me about you growing up.
I was born in the Bronx, actually on Pelham Parkway, and went to school straight through.
So you went to public school.
PS 105.
PS 105, because the interesting thing is now your dad, who's still alive, Alvin, and your mother, who recently passed on. Your father was a waiter, right? He was a waiter in Rumpelmeyer's and other places. And then one day, a guy in the produce business said, you really work hard, Alvin. You should try to go into the catering business, right?
Right. What happened was my father was actually working on Fordham Road for Senate Caterers. There was a huge snowstorm. I was a little girl, I remember this. Maybe I was 7 years old. And my father walked across Fordham Road to work in the snowstorm. And this guy, Eddie Guttenplant, who had a big produce business, said, who's going to come to book a party in this weather? But he was such a devoted worker that this man told my father he has to go in business for himself.
And here's the interesting thing. It shows the entrepreneurial spirit of your father and mother. Your father finds an Arthur Murray dance studio where they would do lessons during the day, and he rents it out at night.
Right, it was perfect because they would give dance lessons, and at night this dance studio stood empty, so they were thrilled to have the extra revenue, and my father was thrilled to be able to get into a facility where he could do events on nights and weekends when it wasn't being used.
And this was a perfect way for his daughter to learn, going as a co-check girl, learning other situations. But later on, from the initial Silver Caterers, he gets involved with a synagogue in the Bronx. What happens then?
All right, from Arthur Murray, he became a kosher caterer at the Pelham Parkway Jewish Center. I was just a little girl, and so my parents were poor. They had no money, so they would take me to work every single day after school. So I really learned the catering business from the back forward, doing smorgasbords and cooking and check room. And
so you graduated what high school?
Christopher Columbus High School in the Bronx.
And you graduated at 16 years of age.
That's correct.
And you go to Lehman College.
Yes, Lehman.
And you were studying for what when you were at Lehman College?
I was a speech and communications major in Lehman College because I always had a big mouth.
So from Lehman, you started to teach, right?
After Lehman College, my mother always taught me the perfect job for any woman in those years was to be a teacher so that you could be home and off on, weekends with your children, because the catering business was the antithesis of that. It was nights, weekends. When the world played, you worked.
But you worked in the catering business also.
That's correct.
While you're doing that, you then you taught at a variety of places. Where were you teaching?
Well, I had the good fortune. There was a professor, Mardell Ogilvy, who loved me. And at 19 years old, right out of college, I was teaching at Bronx Community College, speech and English, and also at DeWitt Clinton High School. And later I taught I went on to law school and taught in Adelphi's.
Right, but before we get to law school, there's an interesting situation. Your father is still, at this time, in the Bronx, in catering. And then you tell me one day one of your classmates was booking a wedding, and you went through the union book of musicians, right?
I think I was always an entrepreneur and always ambitious. So my dad was the caterer at Pelham Parkway in the Bronx. But people didn't want to do parties in the Bronx, so we needed to broaden our horizons. And so I needed to find a facility on Queens, Long Island, and I had just gotten my driver's license. I was 17 years old, and every day after school I would take the union book of musicians, which told how many musicians, thereby it would tell me how big the ballroom would be. If you needed 10 musicians, then I knew this was a big ballroom.
And then you had a friend who was getting married in the Five Towns, right?
Right. I was in Lehman College, Sandy Gross. She said,
Sandy Gross.
I'm getting married in this place in Hewlett. It's gorgeous. You have to, see it.
And you didn't even know what Hewlett was. You were a Bronx girl. You never say Hewlett.
Hewlett.
Hewlett?
I got lost in Hewlett Harbor. I said, oh my God, people live like that? And it turns out that my dad became the caterer at this particular synagogue.
Now, how'd that happen?
Well, it was through my pushing entrepreneurship. I actually found out that there was a caterer there, and he was looking for a partner. So I told my dad this would be the perfect situation. And I remember I was young, and I was literally booking parties because he was still taking care of the other facility.
In the Bronx.
In the Bronx. And so he put me in there in Hewlett to book parties. And much to my surprise, I was quite good at it because I was used to being more in the back of the house, growing up in the kitchen and the coat room.
So how do you decide to go to law school?
My grandfather, should rest in peace, my father's father lived with us, and I was the apple of his eye and he was the apple of my eye. I swear to this day that my brains definitely came from him. And he was a lawyer, and I wanted to go to law school.
So was this your mother's father?
No, my father's father.
So this was your father's father. Yes. He lived with you, and so he was very helpful in law school. How did you decide to go to Hofstra?
Well, it was close. I had a 2-year-old son.
Right.
It was close to where I lived.
Because you were living out there because you were now in Hewlett running.
Right, Hewlett, and my father then became the caterer in East Meadow. And so I was living in East Meadow, and Hofstra was very close. And I had a 2-year-old little boy. And
so here, this caterer, school teacher, everything, now goes to law school. And in the same manner that finishing college in 3 years, you decide, well, I don't want to spend 3 years for law school. I want to finish it in 2 years, right?
What I did was I went through law school in 2 years. My mom would come every day to watch my son. He used to call me Mommy and her other Mommy. And he was only 2 years old. And now, today, he's a father, and I'm a grandma. So, and I went straight through. At that time, there was a double summer session. They don't have that anymore. And I went straight through law school in 2 years and graduated.
So you finished law school, and then you told me you clerked for a lawyer, and you worked for a law practice.
That was one of the highlights of my legal career. I did a legal internship program with Marie Santagata. It was you have to realize, when I went to law school, there weren't many women in law school, and here was a woman judge, and so it was someone for me to so look up to and respect, and it really was the highlight of my legal career. And her husband also was the president of the Bar Association.
So now here we are. We have a lawyer, a school teacher, a part-time caterer, and did you have your second child, your daughter, born yet?
When I graduated law school, she was born in 1980, yes.
So
upon graduation.
And what happens in the same manner that you said to me and you just brought up, there were very few women in law, there were no women in catering. Catering was a men's profession. Catering and kosher catering was even more of a, so one day you decide that you're going to really break into this and you're going to go into glatt kosher catering. What is glatt kosher catering? Explain to me what's the difference between a kosher apple, kosher catering, and versus glatt kosher catering?
Glatt kosher is a much stricter standard. For example, when they slaughter the cow, they blow up the lungs. If there's one spot, it cannot be glatt kosher. And it's the more religious a person is, the more orthodox, the food that they eat is glatt kosher. The standards are quite much stricter.
When you go to certain catering halls, not with Rhona's, and you went to this, the food was bland, or it was ultra salty, or it was this and that. And you said that besides the fact that I wanted to change from kosher catering to glatt kosher, you wanted to make this good food with a great presentation, that it wasn't a rubber chicken, and it looked different. But you really had certain things against you, besides the fact that you were a woman trying to go into a glatt kosher world. So who was the rabbi who helped you in this situation?
I had a personal friend by the name of Rabbi Fruchter who has since passed away. But when I wanted to be a glatt kosher caterer, I decided that I was going to be the best, because if you needed glatt kosher food at that time, I'm going back 20-something years ago, there was no choice but the rubber chicken on a plate. And I decided I was going to be like the Lakot Basque of the glatt kosher world. I hired the best chefs, the best garde-mangers. There was only one little problem, breaking into it.
So how do you break into this world of, and it's a great story. You told me how you broke in.
I'm very tenacious. So I knew that I needed a proper supervision. And so I went to Brooklyn, I put on a hat, long sleeves, a long dress, and I met the rabbi, and I said, I'm very respectful, and he said, okay, sounds good, and what yeshiva do your children go to? Well, my children did not go to yeshiva, and I couldn't certainly lie, but I never gave up the dream, because I saw that there was a void in the market. I lived in the 5 towns. I saw the demographics changing, and these women wore the most beautiful clothes from Paris. But for their parties, they couldn't get better than a piece of chicken thrown on a plate, and I was determined to change that. And so I never gave up, and a year later, there was a gentleman by the name of Rabbi Harvey Sent who had just started Kuf K. He needed clients, and I needed a rabbi.
And Kuf K was the supervision.
Was the supervision. I never had the keys to my own kitchen in all the years.
So wait, they didn't give you the keys to your kitchen?
No, it was against Jewish law for a non-Orthodox Jew to have the keys to her kitchen. So if I needed to clean the floors, Mike, I had to bring in a rabbi I had to pay a rabbi to watch the dishwasher clean the floors.
But getting the glatt kosher supervision did a variety of things. First of all, it made you proverbially the queen of kosher catering in Long Island, but it also made you the premier glatt kosher caterer, because you then took the locations that you had in Long Island and you went into the hotels. You broke into the hotels. You were the caterer for the Plaza, the Pierre, the Waldorf Astoria. There was not a place. I mean, in addition, you were the caterer for the prime ministers. Every major Israeli who came in, or anyone, they wanted silver caterers.
That was correct. I had the most incredible career in that everyone from Ron Perlman, when his son Stephen was getting married, to the Prime Minister of Israel, to Leah Rabin, when she got her honorary degree from Fairleigh Dickinson, I was catering the party, and not just the New York hotels, but all across the tri-state area. And there would be people from California who wanted a very high-end glatt kosher event. And I was it. There was no one else at that time, there was really no competition.
And in addition to that, I mean, you got involved, and you joined the YPO, you were in these women exchange. I mean, you were involved, as you are today, in many of these organizations. Now, something interesting happens in the mid-90s. And in my research, it said that there was a Christmas party. Father Tom Hartman, a wonderful guy, his brother had died of AIDS. And he had this charity, Christina House, I believe it was called. And you catered the Christmas party. How'd that happen?
I did a TV shoot. I used to do on Long Island Our Story with Valerie Forte, and it was shot at Father Tom Hartman's telecare. And one day when I was doing, I think it was actually a Thanksgiving, because I was very creative with food. I would make food into works of art. So I did many theme TV shows, and Valerie said to me, Father Tom needs a Christmas party. And I was only a glatt kosher caterer. And my mother always taught me, by the grace of God, if it's not you with your hand out, you help. So I said, okay, he needs a Christmas party. I'll do the Christmas party.
And this was very important to him because his late brother had passed on of AIDS, and this was a facility for people with HIV and AIDS.
Right, it was called Christa House, and it was totally free for these people, and they would take them in and make their last days, you know, something special.
And so doing one good deed comes back later on. So it's in the mid-90s, and what happens? I mean, New York City had Leonard's. New York City had the Huntington House, townhouse. So Rhona Silva now sets her sights on this place called the Huntington Townhouse. What was the Huntington Townhouse?
The Huntington Townhouse was the largest catering facility in the United States of America. It was 148,000 square feet, 12 ballrooms, 7 kitchens, and it was on approximately 18 acres of land.
Now, if I had an opportunity, I could have gone to dinner there every other night. Nobody would know which wedding I was going to.
Absolutely. You could have gone from room to room, but you would have been welcomed anyway, Mike. So I actually heard that the Huntington Townhouse was for sale, and we were caterers in various synagogues, and it was almost a no-brainer because we could buy I could buy the Huntington Townhouse for less money than
you were paying for all the catering facilities.
For the catering facilities. So there was only one problem. I was a woman, I was single, I was Jewish, I was anyone that should own the biggest catering in the United States of America.
You know, the Huntington Townhouse was originally started in 1939 by, I think, the Mano family.
Thomas
Mano, and basically the reason that they were selling it, I think, is that he was sick or he had passed on over there. So you had to deal with the Mano family to get approved for the deal. Right. And what happens? You're ready to sign a check, and what happens?
So I go and I meet with their attorney, and I'm ready to leave a deposit because I realize, you know, one thing when I was in law school, I'd always read the Sunday Times, and my rich clients in the kosher world were always in the real estate business. So now I had the opportunity to own this land on Jericho Turnpike. But there was only one problem. They wouldn't sell it to me because I was the least likely person to own the biggest catering hall in America, except what they didn't know was I was also tenacious Rhona, who never gives up.
So what really happens is you make a phone call to Father Tom, right?
So when I did that Christmas party, I did not even know Father Tom. And he said to me, for what you did for me, if I can ever repay you, don't hesitate to call. And I thought, oh, what would this glatt kosher caterer ever need with this priest? Well, I was riding on 57th Street, and I was determined to own this because the price was right. Catering was in my blood. I say it's in my DNA. And here I had the opportunity, instead of catering to just one segment of the world's population, now I could cater to everybody. So to me, it was win-win. I just had to figure out how I was going to buy it because they didn't want to sell it to me. So I was on 57th Street and 5th Avenue, and I stopped my car. I remember literally sort of like pulling over, and I said, I'm going to call that Father Tom. He's the most Catholic person I know. And Mr. Mano was, you know, I did my homework, and he was, you know, quite a spiritual gentleman. And I asked Father Tom, you know, if he knew Mr. Mano. He said, of course I know the Mano family. I said, well, I'd like to buy the Huntington Townhouse. He said, for you, Rhona, what you did for me, I will be on the next jet plane down to Florida. Well, as it turns out, the minute he made the phone call to Mrs. Mano, the fact that Father Tom was calling on behalf of Rhona Silva, she knew I had to be someone special in her mind. And so I was part on my way, except there was one other problem. There was some people down in Florida with their estate lawyer who were due to buy the Huntington Townhouse that week. And literally, I took a year out of my life, never giving up, to purchase that property.
So when do you buy the townhouse?
I buy it April 21st, 1997.
You run the townhouse through 2007, right?
That's correct, for 10
Now,
years.
but during that period of time, because it had such a great location, such a great physical, people were thinking you'd build townhouses there, you'd build a hotel, you'd build a variety of things, and also keep part of the catering facility. What happens later on, 2006, 2007?
Well, actually, Lowe's was after me for years. I think I would say almost 5 years prior to the actual sale. Target came to me. I was a caterer and I learned so much about real estate. Everybody had a different plan. And people would approach me all the time. And when Lowe's first approached me, it was about 5 years prior to them coming on the property. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. But as time went on, I realized I was working 100 hours a week. I really had no social life, although I loved what I did, so it didn't bother me. And Lowe's was very persistent. And
then, as one would say in the proverbial thing, they gave you a price that you couldn't walk away from.
right, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
So now you sell the townhouse. It's very interesting. That was 2007. In 2011, they just broke ground last week. They just demolished the townhouse. It was over there. Now in 2000, and you said, you know, I sold the townhouse. I got money over there, but that wasn't good. It was like 36 hours, and you said, I got to go into something new.
So I sort of retired for about 3 days, and I went from working 100 hours a week. Plus, one thing about the catering industry, there's no second chance. It's not like the law where you could have the right to appeal.
So you know, we were talking, you know, the world has changed. The internet has changed. Yahoo, Google, all of these new sites, LinkedIn, Facebook, everything. And, you know, in the same manner of Priceline, where, you know, you can bid a party, bid for airlines, Rhona Silva says, I'm going to be in the internet. CaterBid. What's CaterBid?
CaterBid.com is revolutionizing the way people are booking events. Like Priceline is to airlines and Hotels.com is to hotels. Well, now there's CaterBid.com for catering. We're nationwide, we're in 50 states, and you can go online, post your event, and caterers come to you, which is fabulous because it's free to use. It makes your life so easy.
And you have a strategic alliance with David Bridal?
What happened was I actually represented the catering industry for President Bush on a women's mentoring program in Helsinki, Finland, and Latvia and Dubai. And there I met there was 50 women from America with 50 women from the Baltic states, and one of the other 50 women was the head of strategic partnerships at David's Bridal. And at that time, which was like 7 years ago, they did 1 million weddings a year. I said, 1 million weddings a year? I own the biggest catering hall in America, and thought I did a big business. And literally, I sort of kept that in the back of my mind.
So when did you launch CaterBid?
It took several years. Remember, I was a bricks and mortar caterer. So learning the internet, my children are in it with me. And, you know, this is what I said. I said, if you could find a significant other online with all these dating services, you certainly can book an event online. What's fabulous is whether you're a corporation or you're a bride that gets engaged at 1 in the morning and wants to post your event.
Right, but it's not only for brides. You know, it's like for open houses. It could be affairs, and besides catering, you know, they have the capability of getting their flowers, their centerpieces, their invitations, the entire. You know, it's full-fledged. You know, it's like the Amazon.com of catering.
Well, I mean, the benefit of CaterBid, certainly, you know, catering is the key, is you could be in California and you need an event in New York, a corporate event. How do you know who to use? You post your event on CaterBid and the caterers come to you. And I recently did something for a woman from Utah, and she couldn't stop thanking me because she said I didn't know where, needed a 2-day corporate event in New York.
And it's not limited, like, I mean, even the townhouse, you had a glut kosher, but it was not only kosher, it was open to every type of food when you had the townhouse.
Right, and CaterBid the same thing, whether it's you know, an Indian event, a kosher event, a regular American, any type of ethnicity or any kind of event. It could be a communion, it could be a trade show.
Let's talk a little bit about, your son is Matthew.
Yes.
And Matthew is married.
Yes, he is.
And Matthew, you have a grandchild.
I have 2 grandchildren.
And their names?
Ryan and Julia.
How old is Ryan?
7.
And Julia?
Is just going to be 4
And
in a week.
Matthew's wife?
Christine.
Christina. and you have a daughter.
Rebecca.
Now, Rebecca, the interesting situation, Rebecca went to law school, and you had the honor of hooding her, right?
Right. Rebecca and I are the only mother-daughter team ever to graduate from Hofstra Law School, and it was such an honor to literally hood her when she graduated. It was so
And you were
special.
telling me, both Matthew and Rebecca have been involved with the business, but Rebecca really got involved even more. She worked for Le Cirque.
She was actually the director of catering at Le Cirque when she was 24 years old. What happened was when she graduated from law school, like her mother, catering was in her DNA. And I knew Sirio, and she started with, like a job for Christmas time. And literally within 10 days of her working there, they brought her into the office, and they knew that she knew more in her little pinky because look, I was a single mom. My children came to work with me the same as I did with my parents, and so they learned the catering business inside and out.
Now, the kids are involved with you on CaterBid, you said to me.
Yes, because the internet to me was something totally new, and was something that although I had a huge depth of knowledge in the catering world, learning how to build the site, and it was a whole different experience.
So, with this woman who is tenacious, charming, but always pushing, what's next after CaterBid? I mean, what are the hopes? I mean, where do you see this going?
I think CaterBid is going over the top. I mean, we have requests from everywhere. I have a strategic partnership with David's Bridal, which now does 1,800,000 weddings a year, and
wait a second. Now, with the approval of gay marriage, this is, and I'm not being facetious, because someone came to me about the financing of a gay hotel, and the number of increases on parties because of the approval of gay marriage in New York is going to increase the volume completely.
Being in New York, I mean, well, we're in 50 states, but certainly, I mean, the people for years that wanted to get married. I remember doing catering at the Huntington Town House. John Cooper, who's the legislator changed the cell phone law in the United States. I did a commitment ceremony for him because at that time, you couldn't get married. But now you're exactly right. These people have waited years.
I am certain that the little kid from the Bronx who grew up in Pelham Parkway, Fordham Road originally, and then Pelham Parkway, is definitely going to exceed in CaterBid. And you have truly been an interesting New York story. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, All Nation Renovation, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, LLC, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Capital One Bank, C.B. Richard Ellis, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, Cushman & Wakefield, Dimes Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Eastern Consolidated, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman, LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova, Burns and Giantomasi, Grubb and Ellis, Investors Savings Bank, Jack Jaffa and Associates Real Estate Consultants, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Newmark Knight Frank, RAL Development Services, The Spandrel Group, LLC, Siami Development, SJP Properties, Site Comply, Sterling & Sterling, Stephen Napolitano, The Wickoff Group, Urban American.